Welcome to the Tech Ed Podcast, where we visit with leaders who are shaping, innovating, and disrupting technical education. People who are not afraid to think differently, not afraid to try something new, all with the goal of securing the American dream for the next generation of STEM and workforce talent. Welcome back to the Tech Ed Podcast. I will tell you that our next guest was described to me by the people at FANUC as, quote, and this is their words, not mine, a legend in the world of automation. So they literally called our guest a legend in the world of automation. I'm going to tend to agree. Absolutely phenomenal background. We're going to have a really, really fascinating conversation with Robby Komljenovic, and Robby is the chairman and CEO of ACETA, which is an organization really well known to people in manufacturing, in advanced manufacturing. Let me just start out by welcoming the legend in automation to the Tech Ed Podcast studio.
Well, thank you.
It's awesome to have you here, and I want to make sure that we really educate our listeners about the incredible work that you and your team are doing. The word integrator may not be completely familiar to everybody in manufacturing and everybody who's listening. So maybe you could just start out, Robby, by telling us a little bit about what is an integrator and what is the work that you do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on this here. And when I hear legend, I feel really old. Yeah, so an integrator, what we do, we basically take all kinds of technologies we can find in the marketplace and we integrate them into solutions.
Okay.
So our mission is to go into manufacturing facilities, identify the challenges, whether it's a labor challenge or a technology challenge, and then we find the right solution, the right technology, and integrate that into a solution. So that's really what an integrator is. And FANUC, of course, we've been with FANUC for 40 years. We just celebrated our 40th anniversary, April 1st.
Amazing.
We've been exclusive with FANUC for all these years, so it's pretty cool, yeah.
So when you talk about integrating these components, I'm guessing it's robots, it's programmable logic controllers, it's conveyors, it's sensors, it's actuators, all these kind of things. I mean, is that right? Is it all this different advanced manufacturing technology that you're integrating towards solutions?
Yes, it is. And so there's all kinds of different integrators out there. For us, we're what we would consider robot integrator. Okay. So pretty much if there's no robot involved, then we lose somewhat of the interest.
Okay.
What a robot does for you, it gives you a tremendous flexibility and redeployment and changing the application if needed. And so we've always stuck with having the robot as the centerpiece of our automation solution versus hard automation, which is another way of automating some processes that are typically like higher volume, longer life cycle. With a robot, you're much more flexible. So, and our in-house expertise really lies in that heart and soul of a robot programming, deploying that with all kinds of technologies, whether it's on the welding side. So you're adding, a torch to a robot, whether that is just material handling or you're using the robot to actually change the shape of a part.
Sure.
Through polishing, through drilling, milling, all kinds of things you can do in a CNC. We do those kind of stuff on a robot applications as well.
I speak on these topics a lot. I know you do as well. And, up until about 3 or 4 years ago, it was guaranteed that I would get the question, are the robots going to take all the jobs? I mean, it was just guaranteed. It wasn't a question of whether that question would come up. It was just how deep into the Q&A period it was going to come up. And we don't get that question anymore. I think people are starting to realize that in order to have a vibrant manufacturing sector, we need to leverage the incredible talent we already have in as many ways as possible. And if we can take some of the more mundane, perhaps traditionally less safe, maybe not as well paying jobs and replace those with automation and then upskill the people that were doing those jobs into new skills and new opportunities and working with the automation solutions that ACETA is implementing, it's really a win-win. The company ends up being able to reduce costs. The consumer ends up being able to pay a lower price for the product that they're buying, and the employee is making more money and having a much more fulfilling job. Are you seeing the same thing?
Oh, 100%. We always talk about the 3 Ds, right? Yep. The dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs. Those are the kind of jobs that you start with automating.
Exactly.
But we have a much bigger problem in the United States specifically. When we look at the next 5 years, we're going to have about 3 million job openings in manufacturing, just in North America, 10 million across the world, right? But 3 million in manufacturing here in the U.S. And when you look at one robot does about labor capacity of about 3 people if you're running 3 shifts, right? So we need to backfill 1 million robots just to keep up with the baby boomers retiring, next generation not being as excited about being in manufacturing. And we're not even talking about reshoring. So that's a whole nother dynamic that has been brought to us over the last couple of years with a lot of that, geopolitical challenges. People are moving a lot of their manufacturing back to the United States, and they can't do that without automating because there's not enough labor, and there's a price competitiveness that comes with it too. But to your point, in terms of how do we explain automation in a way where people will receive it?
Right.
When I got into this field, I had to answer to my family and my friends all the time. It's like, oh, so you're going to replace all these workers now? And I'm like, when we get to that point, let's start talking about that point. We're not there.
Yeah, exactly.
So every one of our customers, I can tell you right now, they hire more people as they get more successful, better performance, better competitiveness. They add more people when they can. They can't find the people. And to your point, the folks they have on their manufacturing floors, they're figuring out how can we scale their talent.
Right.
So instead of having 5 guys with a torch welding on parts, have each one of those 5 guys operate 5 welding robots. So now you're scaling. Now you really have the opportunity to scale. And we're always talking about, like arc time in the welding world. It's like the arc time is typically, if you're at close to 20%, you're doing pretty well. That's not a whole lot of effective use of talent, right?
For sure.
So that's kind of where, when we explain what we do to people that are outside of our industry, we really look at, hey guys, we all still want our cars and our watches and our iPhones. Who's going to make it?
Exactly. And I think we got a big reminder of that going through the pandemic, where, I've mentioned it a number of times that when we could all get what we wanted, when we wanted it, at a price we wanted to pay for it, it's really easy to take manufacturing for granted, right? You just, you go on Amazon and you hit a couple of buttons and it shows up at your door, and it's like, it's just magic. And it's like, no, wait a minute. There's, thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of manufacturers all over the United States and around the globe that are responsible for putting those assemblies together, for creating those products, for creating sub-assemblies, for being suppliers to large OEMs that a lot of us never think about. Recent guest on our podcast is a gentleman by the name of Ashutosh Pati, who is the managing director for McKinsey & Company, the big consulting company, and he runs their whole operation across North America. Just wrote a book called The Titanium Economy, and it's all of these small to mid-sized companies that nobody's thought about that are producing products for larger companies. And so you don't know the owner, it's not like a Jeff Bezos, it's not an Elon Musk, but they're quietly creating tremendous amounts of wealth for themselves and others. They're really the lifeblood of American manufacturing and the American economy. Don't oftentimes get enough credit. Is that the size of company you're typically working with, or is it larger Fortune 500 companies? Is it everything in between? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we cover pretty much the total spectrum. So Fortune 500 companies, whether it's in agriculture or the John Deeres of the world and the Caterpillars and those guys, Bobcats, a lot in construction, equipment manufacturing. But we also do a lot of work with smaller mom and pop job shops. So job shops are about 70% of job shops in the United States do not have automation currently in place.
That's crazy.
That is a tremendous market for us that we need to go after. So we've done a lot of interesting things over the last few years. We're trying to understand how can we get these folks into automation, because we want to preserve those jobs, right? And so we developed a whole slew of standard products, which are predefined, pre-engineered, built to specific standards, and are low cost of entry. So we're trying to take that fear factor out of automation for the smaller shops, right? When we work with the guys like Conagra and food manufacturing and so forth, those guys, they get automation. They understand it. It was just always a matter of what's the return of investment. The smaller shops where you have the owner-operator that runs the business, it's a little more scary because it's not their core competency. Their core competency is whatever their process is, what they're making, lead times, making parts, meeting lead times, those kind of things. And then to bring in automation, they've been in manufacturing for sometimes generations. So bringing in automation and robotics to them is a scary thing. And it's an investment that doesn't necessarily add value to the part. It just adds capacity. And so we have customers that literally are like 2 people in the business, and we have customers that are 100,000 people around the world.
So some of those turnkey solutions that you mentioned, and we've talked a little bit about welding, we've talked about material handling, but give us a sense of those turnkey solutions that you reference.
Yeah, so there's 2 ways that we go after automating our customers. One of them is you walk into their shop floor, you listen. It's like a consulting engagement, really. and it's figuring out how do you help that customer to solve their challenge, whatever the challenge might be. Labor force is certainly one we talked about, but it could also be technical challenges, and it could be one of those dirty, dull, and dangerous jobs, right? So when we do that, that becomes a custom turnkey solution. So we literally address exactly the challenge that they have in front of them. And those projects, they can, some of them last a year long because they're massive, large systems. And then the other piece is when we come in with standard products, which we have in all our verticals that we operate in, whether it's palletizing, for example, like end-of-line case packing and palletizing, those kind of applications, we have standard products for that. So it's like, okay, here's the size, here's the range, here's what we can do with that. And that's a different sale, because that's like, it's all about capability, availability, and price. The custom solutions, it's all about how do you solve that problem,
right?
And they're both fun. Innovation, technology comes in all the time. Vision systems, any kind of. If you think about pretty much anything a human being does today, whether that is take apart and move it, uses the eyes, uses the hand in terms of sensing of weight and pressure and so forth, all of that can be done with technology today. But you have to look at what makes sense. And this is where some companies fail at some point, often in their first endeavors, is trying to over-automate, because it doesn't make sense of always over-automate everything. So our job as the consultant is to make sure that the return of investment, that it makes sense from a technology and process perspective. And that's what we do. So our sales personnel, they're all engineers. They're all technical guys. They have to be, and it's a ton of fun. It's very interesting. Some of my friends are like commodity traders. That's a very different world, right? They're both sales guys, but it's a very different world.
Absolutely, yeah. In the end, you're trying to add value for a client in one way or the other, but the creativity that's required on the integration side, and really, as somebody who ran manufacturing companies for the better part of a quarter century, really thinking about, I like to think about automation as a lean tool, right? So we're trying to drive waste out of a process somewhere. And whether that's improving yield, whether it's improving throughput, whether it's making a job safer so that
quality.
We're mitigating risk, quality for sure. All of those things are things that you'd do a Kaizen event, you'd do a continuous improvement event, you'd identify a problem, you'd drive it back to root cause, you'd solve the root cause. And that's the way I like to think about automation, especially for those small to mid-sized businesses, because you're exactly right. The risk of failure, if I'm General Motors, if I'm, Amazon, whatever, and I fail in an automation project, I'm not happy about that, but I'll survive it. A small to mid-sized company with maybe 5-10 people working in it, you could invest your entire annual cash flow in one project. And if that doesn't end up having a payback that's appealing to you, that can be a really, really big risk. So getting it right, consulting with those clients and really thinking through what the solutions need to look like, that's a huge part of your business, I know. And then, as you think about the standardized products as well, I really love that as a business model, and because it's really the best of both worlds. I mean, you have the same challenge everybody else does in trying to scale, right? I mean, you need tremendous amounts of talent, whether it's somebody working in your operation who's actually performing the physical integration of the solutions, or it's somebody out in the field who's working with a customer to design a new solution. Those people aren't easy to find, especially good ones. And so having that standardized product model allows you to be both really creative with your customers, but also to scale in a way that maybe doesn't require the same amount of human capital to be able to drive revenue growth. So I think that's a really, really fascinating combination of products that you have there. The other thing I find fascinating is that you've been a partner of FANUC for almost a half century, for 40 years. That's a long, long time. What is it about FANUC that appeals to you, Robby, and your team?
When our founder, John Berg, 40 years ago, made the decision to become an integrator and started one of the very first integrators for FANUC outside of the automotive sector, he really had a great vision very early on. If we try to be good at multiple different robot brands, we're never going to be world class. So we made the decision a long time ago that we're going to focus on one brand, one flavor of robots. And certainly, I'm a little biased there. In my opinion, we picked the best one.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And so when you look at the range that FANUC offers, from very small little Scara robots to very large M2000 robots that are, so big that they move cars around.
Right,
exactly.
Certainly they showed
the
Corvette.
Seen the Corvette
awesome.
moving around. We have two of those in our floor right now. Actually, not the Corvette, but the big robots.
Do you really? Wow.
Yeah. So it's really a tremendous range in that they offer, and whether that's in the food grade robots, Of course, they do paint robots, material handling, welding. It's like pretty much you can cover all of the manufacturing
Delta,
sector.
6-axis,
Delta robots,
yeah.
exactly. So high speed pick and place robots. And so for us, our ecosystem, we can only be really good if we focus. And so we made a long time ago the decision to focus on FANUC products, FANUC services. We have 16 master certified service techs that are in our force. So that's a commitment, and it's a very collaborative relationship.
Absolutely, yeah. The times that I've been over, and it's been a couple years, but been to the private show twice in the last decade, and you're right. I mean, you can meet with Dr. Inaba, you can meet with Kenji Yamaguchi, the president. I mean, they're accessible, they're friendly, they want to learn about your business, supportive, and then bringing that leadership style and that culture here to the United States under the direction of people like Mike and others. It's just it's a great company to be partnered with. I often say in another part of my life where we actually do a lot of work with FANUC, I don't know what I did in my prior life to be fortunate enough to be chosen to be one of their partners here, but it must have been something pretty special because it's just an amazing organization.
It really is. And one of the other things they do, which I haven't really seen from anyone else, is they have this called President's Council. And we meet twice a year, and we sit down and they listen to their customers around what do you think, where can we improve, what are the things we did right over the last 6 months, what are the things we need to improve on, and they literally listen. We go back 6 months later, we sit down, we're like, okay, here's the list of things that we talked about, and then they present us, here are the changes that we've made to address that. And that's something, I don't know any other product company that does that.
And it's key to their success. And another key to their success, and something they've done really, really well, is their commitment to education under the direction of Paul Aiello, their executive director of their education team. I mean, just totally committed. More schools teaching on the FANUC platform here in the United States than any other platform by far. And it really speaks to it kind of comes back to this question of talent. How do we inspire more people toward these amazing careers? How do we get young people excited about them? How do we take people who are maybe in other elements of the workforce, in hospitality and retail and in some other element of the workforce now in tech, which is contracting a little bit, get them excited about careers in advanced manufacturing? Specific to the world of integration, are there specific attributes or skills or competencies that you look for because that role might be different than somebody who's doing factory automation in an OEM, for example? Or is there more commonality, or are there things that are specific to your model?
Yeah, so as an integrator, as we just talked about, we look at all kinds of different applications. So you really have to be quick thinking on your feet, and flexibility in how you approach challenges is key. If you're an automation engineer at General Motors or wherever, you're dedicated to either you're at the assembly line or you're at the paint line or so forth. It's a little bit less of a range in challenges that you see every day. So it's very ultra focused. For us, it's like we have specific people that we would say are like technology thinkers, leaders in specific applications. So we have a group of people that are really good at welding, right? So when we have welding challenges, those are the guys that we tap into. Then we have other guys that are really good at high speed placements, for example. That's a different skill set. But as a team, we need to be able to address almost everything that's out there. Otherwise, we're not doing any good services to our customers. So it's really like that. Think outside the box. Be creative. Don't get sucked into a narrative. Just make sure that you're looking at every challenge with open eyes.
Absolutely. And I'd like to think that the wide variety of different projects that these folks are working on makes it really appealing to somebody who likes that variety in the workplace. You're going to work on one really cool project, perhaps in one market space for 3, 6, 12 months, and then you're going to be assigned to some other application. And so obviously the commonality of the platform, the commonality of advanced manufacturing technology, and having your own specialty, but putting that specialty to work in a lot of different spaces. Is that one of the things you hear from your team members about what they like about working in integration?
100%. It's that range of options and challenges that are allowed in their jobs. And our folks will talk to that. We have schools coming through every week, at least once.
Do you really?
Where we have high schools, we have middle schools coming through at least once a week. And education is dear to my heart. I'm on the board of the Educational Foundation, and the appeal to the job is that there's almost never that you do the same thing the week after week after week. It doesn't happen, right? Today, as you said, you're working on some big weld system, and tomorrow you're going to put dog bones into a box,
Right,
right?
yeah.
So it's
Total
literally
variety.
that range,
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
and you get to play with robots every day. It's
Right,
it's like every kid's dream, right?
Yeah, from welding to dog bones and playing with robots. I mean, what could be better?
What could be better? Exactly.
That's awesome. Where do you find these people?
So I would say about 50% of our programmers, when they come into ACETA, we bring directly from a tech school. So
Okay.
we work with several tech schools around the country, and we recruit them straight out of school. The other 50%, they come from the marketplace. So they come with some experience. They have to have a healthy balance between, fresh thinkers
Right.
and experience.
Of course.
And when you put those two together into a team, then you can achieve a lot of things. But this is a job that didn't exist a few years ago, right? So
Yeah.
this is not something that the educational system was ready for 20 years ago. Now they're getting there. Now, you mentioned Paul, he's done a tremendous job in education of 1,500 schools. Think about the exposure of that. There's what? It's 100,000 students that come out of those programs, and they're ready to jump into the integrator manufacturing world. And so we really start very early on, and there's all kinds of studies out there. Why do we have less female than male in our industry and so forth? And we're trying to address those as well. And I have to say that over the last 5 years that I've been involved, I think we're at about 18% female by now.
That's great. How many employees do you have?
We're 113.
Okay, great.
113 people. So that's across the spectrum. But there's about 10, 12 that are on the technology side of the business. But to grow our technical base with female is awesome.
That's
It's
fantastic,
awesome. And
yeah.
they bring such a different mindset to
Totally.
the game too. It's very healthy to have that.
It is.
We're really
I mean,
excited.
When I was in my manufacturing days, we hired a ton of welding talent,
Mhm.
and so I can tell you when we would hire women welders when you could find them, as a general rule, and it's a generalization. Hope I don't offend anybody, but way better attention to detail, way more patient. Just based upon apparently the way they're wired or what have you. But really really fascinating to see more and more women in manufacturing. Huge focus for us. My wife's an engineer and went through the whole undergrad and master's degree engineering program. Huge advocate for women in STEM and women in engineering, and I think it makes us better companies the more more diverse we can be. So it's a great effort to be a part of. Tell us a little bit about, you mentioned technical colleges, and that's where you're doing some of your recruiting. What are their degrees in? Automation, electromechanical? What types of degrees do these people come to you with?
There actually are robot degrees now, like robot programming degrees. They're typically 2-year tech schools.
Got it.
I'm a big proponent of going that route. I can't tell you how many folks I know that go to get a 4-year degree and then 2 years later they work in a very different field.
Right.
So typically electrical and mechanical engineers, obviously we need those to design the systems. Software engineers, then as I mentioned, programming, robot programming technicians. Those are really the typical roles that we're looking for.
So if a young person is interested in that type of a career, a couple lessons that I think I just heard here: you don't necessarily have to pile on a ton of debt through a 4-year degree program. Maybe earning a degree that isn't as interesting or won't necessarily have a career for you when you're done. In some cases, you can go to a local technical college, a community college, get a 2-year associate's degree in robotics and automation and electromechanical technology, and have an amazing career at an organization like ACETA. So it's a great message for our young people that you've got all of these options, and we really need to do the hard work of exposing more and more of them to these amazing opportunities. You talk about tours through your manufacturing facilities. You talk in your integration facilities. You talk about certainly the work that FANUC is doing. What are other things that we should be doing to interest more people in these careers?
Yeah, I think there's like a generational shift. All right, so I think there just needs to be more exposure. And that's why we do tours all the time. We bring schools through, we bring colleges through, because manufacturing, and this, has still somewhat of that stigma of being like dirty and loud. And, it doesn't look like that anymore these days, especially when you automate with robotics. So
yeah, for sure.
So it also, our customers, they tell us that when they automate with robots, their retention rate and their appeal to folks bringing them into manufacturing goes up like 10x, right?
That's awesome. I never thought of that. That's awesome.
If you're competing for labor and you show the applicants that you are a progressive thinker, that you're a progressive company, that you care for the safety and the health of your employees, and that you're invest into the future and into technology. That's very appealing versus the other company next door that hasn't done anything other than buying new machines, but not automating at all, right?
That's a really, really deep comment when you think about it, that not only is automation not necessarily costing people their jobs, but the individuals who are working in companies that automate are more likely to stay with those companies. So if you're a company that believes, as I certainly do, that retention of your key talent is one of the most important things you can possibly do in terms of growing and expanding and having a vibrant business, automating those processes is one of the things that you can do to retain that talent. That's a really, really fascinating observation. Frankly, one that I hadn't thought about as much time as I spent thinking about this stuff. And I'm gonna give you credit the next 3 times I use that, and then I'm just gonna steal it shamelessly.
That's okay. The more people talk about it, the better it is for all of us. Yes, absolutely.
100%. Yeah, that's a really, really cool observation, Robby. Let's talk about trends. I mean, the prevalence of AI, of machine learning, of advanced software, of vision systems, 3D scanning. I mean, it's just, even in the last 5 years, it's amazing where this industry has come. What are some of those trends that you and Asita have your eyes on right now?
Yeah, what comes up very often, and this is part of scaling automation into our manufacturing customers, is ease of use. So that's something where, again, we talked about earlier, the fear of automating and bringing in ease of use tools, whether that's, HMI interfaces, anything that makes it easy to deploy a robot into an application. Collaborative robots, they have tremendous strides over the last few years. I remember, I think UR was one that was the big scale company that decided to do only collaborative robots, right?
Right.
At 10 years ago, I think, when they started. And so you certainly see that getting into other applications that we wouldn't have thought about in the past. And those are also rising in size. So back in the days, if a collaborative robot that has a payload of maybe 10 kilos, 22 pounds, right? Today we're going up to almost 50 kilos. I mean, those are
exactly on the CRX.
On the CR35, I think now it's coming to that payload range. The CRX, as you mentioned, the 25, that's 25 kilos.
Yep. Right.
And that goes up to 30 kilos now with some technology tweaks on that. Those are some of the things that we haven't seen in the past, and we can deploy them now to way more applications than we've been able to do in the past with more reach. So you can, a lot of the pelletizing, for example, that's going to those kind of technologies, because those are, again, jobs that a person shouldn't be doing. It's not good for your back. It's not good for your body in general, and use that person and put them somewhere else where they can create way more value than loading boxes onto a pallet. So ease of use is a big one, and the world of vision continues to evolve very quickly, and this is where AI comes in, right? Everybody's like, when are you guys going to use AI? I'm like, we're already using that. We've been using that for many years. It's just now it's a now it's a household name now, right? But we've been using it for a long time, like bin picking applications, where we just put a box with a bunch of random parts in it in front of a camera, and it figures out how to best not just find it, but how to best actually grip it and move it. And so those are the machine learning processes that are running in the background, and that continues to grow. We have also, if you look at it from an ease of use perspective, using scanners, for example, to generate code on the robot. So you don't have to program the robot anymore. You just upload basically a CAD model into the software, and you point the robot in the right direction with the scanner in the right direction, and it writes the code for you. So we're just trying to deploy more and more ease of use features on robots.
Yeah, it's almost hard to keep up with all of it.
It is.
So, and we could talk for probably hours on the trends in automation
sure.
and technology, because I know it fascinates you, and it certainly fascinates me. But we do have a limited amount of time, and so we're getting close to the end of our time here. Robby, and I do have a final question for you, and it's one we love to ask our guests here on the Tech Ed podcast. And we're going to take you back in time before Asita, before studying engineering, growing up when you were 15 years old. You were in Germany, am I right about that?
I was in Germany, yes.
So you're a 15-year-old young German man with this whole life ahead of him. If you could go back in time with everything you've learned, everything you've done, and give that young man one piece of advice, what would it be?
Invest in Bitcoin.
Yeah, right. And then get out early. Right?
Yeah, get out on time. Exactly. Get out on time. No, I I feel like I live a pretty privileged life. And people ask me this all the time. I got into manufacturing when I was 12 years old. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that here, but
well, it was in Germany, whatever.
It was in Germany, exactly. My dad's one of his good friends had a machine shop, a small machine shop, 4 employees. I was a half day employee after school, and started making chips at 12 years old, cleaning the machines and so forth. And then by 15, I was programming CNC machines.
Okay.
And so at that point, I already knew my path is where it's going to go. I didn't know it was going to be robotics at that point. I was a CNC machine tool guy, right? Yeah. So I built a career on that. I was very lucky at the time because I knew I wanted to make a career in manufacturing. And to have a technical background versus a commercial or marketing, nothing wrong with that. But it's an engineering solution
for sure,
a career. So I'd say I would do that again. What I would give advice to others at 15-year-old is like, find what your passion is about. You're going to be good at it.
Right.
Just find what you're really passionate about, and that could be anything. But if it is manufacturing, then go down a path and build a career out of it. You will never be out of a job.
Absolutely. I can't tell you that I knew when I was 12 years old that I wanted to be in manufacturing. I did know I wanted to be a CEO of a company.
Yes,
I mean, I had that dream when I was a young, relatively young man, pre-high school, and managed to manifest that into reality over the course of time with the help of a lot of mentors and probably some good fortune as well. But having found my way into manufacturing on the tech side early on, and then really more in some of the more traditional manufacturing operations that I saw come of age through automation, robotics, and other technologies, I can't imagine wanting to be in any other market space. It's just been so fulfilling. It's so amazing. I have 2 kids, and we insisted that both of them work in manufacturing while they were working their way through post-secondary. I said, you don't have to pick that as a career, but you're going to know what it's like to work in a manufacturing plant. You're going to know what it's like to have that feeling of looking over your shoulder at the end of a day, seeing a sea of parts that you had a part in making, and you know that those wouldn't have existed without your work. And the other thing I told them is I want you to know the amazing types of people that work in manufacturing. And there's probably a little bit of a stigma around manufacturing people that may go back 30, 40, 50 years. If it hasn't changed, it is changing. But just incredible, diverse populations, wonderful people, hardworking people, good people that work in and around manufacturing. I've spent my whole career around them. You've spent your whole career around them, and I'm glad you spent your whole half hour or so here with us on the Tech Ed Podcast. Robby Komljenovic, who is the chairman and CEO of Aceda. Such a fascinating company, fascinating background. You're a really interesting person, and I'm really glad we had this time together.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Anytime.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Tech Ed Podcast. If you haven't already, subscribe, leave a review, and if you liked this episode, share it with a friend. New episodes launch every Tuesday, so listen in next week.